Have you ever noticed that the world's greatest secrets aren't hidden behind vaults, but within silences? It's as if the absence of information is more powerful than a lie. What was never said, what never reached you, could that be where real power is hidden? From an early age, we're shaped by carefully curated knowledge. But who decided what you should know and what you should never even suspect? Ancient civilizations left clues. Egyptians, Mayans, Hindus, Essenes, they all spoke of an energy that flows through the body, the mind, and space. They drew symbols, performed rituals, breathed in specific ways as if they were in dialogue with something invisible. But this knowledge faded, became fragmented, labeled as superstition or heresy. And today, when someone talks about energy, it sounds like fantasy. But what if that ridiculous idea is actually a carefully placed veil? Energy manipulation isn't some esoteric idea lost in time. It's a science that has been forcibly hidden. Tesla said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." But where does this perspective appear in our daily lives? Why don't we learn this in school when even physics acknowledges that everything is energy? Maybe because a mind aware of its own frequency is a mind that's hard to control. Imagine your attention is like a lens. What you focus on grows. What you ignore fades. So, what happens when your attention is diverted away from the most fundamental things? You live surrounded by technologies that drain your energy, by systems that sap your will, and routines that numb you. But no one talks about it. It's like the real knowledge is always there, yet somehow out of your reach. Deliberately. Manipulation doesn't happen with chains and shackles, but with ideas and omissions. You feel free, but you only think within the frames you were given. And those frames don't show the whole picture. What's beyond them? What would your life be like if you had learned from the beginning how to direct your energy with intention? To silence the mind, perceive the invisible, and act from a center that doesn't depend on the external? Maybe the biggest secret is this: what you don't know is still affecting you. And the more we ignore it, the easier we are to guide. So the question isn't what else is out there, but rather, why go to such lengths to hide that it exists? You touch the table, feel the weight of your body on the chair, see the solid world around you, and believe this is real. But what if solidity is just a sensory illusion? Quantum physics clearly states matter is not made of matter. It's vibration, it's field, it's a dance of probabilities. So why do we still believe the world is made of things instead of movement? From a young age, you were taught to trust your senses, to only believe in what you can see, touch, and measure. But the senses, as useful as they are filters. They don't show reality. They show what your brain has learned to notice. And what does it ignore? Subtle frequencies, silent vibrations, layers of energy that flow through your body and the space around you. You're surrounded by them. Right now, you just haven't been trained to notice. Picture a radio. It's in your room, but it makes no sound until you tune in to the right frequency. Only then does the music appear, as if by magic. Now think, if your body is made of energy and your mind is the antenna, how many songs have you never heard because you were out of tune? The truth is, we've been programmed to only believe in the tangible. And the invisible, the vibrational, was thrown into the realm of superstition. Why? Because a human being aware of vibration starts asking dangerous questions. Why do some people drain our energy just by being near us? Why do certain places uplift us while others weaken us? Why do negative thoughts seem to attract more of the same? These aren't coincidences. They're resonances. And those who understand this begin to step off the preset path. A mind that sees through the illusion of matter begins to play with reality. It starts to realize that everything is moldable, that nothing is fixed. Emotions become vibrations, words gain weight, Intentions create forms. What once seemed static now pulses, vibrates, breathes, and life stops being a series of facts and becomes a field of possibilities. Maybe what we were taught to see as reality is just the visible part of something much bigger. And maybe, just maybe, you're not here to adapt to the solid world, but to learn how to navigate the invisible. There is a language that isn't written in letters or spoken in words. It lives in spontaneous gestures, forgotten symbols, in patterns that repeat like silent echoes. This language is so present that you stopped noticing it, but it's there, acting on you all the time, shaping decisions, emotions, even destinies without you realizing. Who taught you to decode the invisible? Ancient civilizations knew this secret language. The Egyptians used hieroglyphs that didn't just represent ideas, they invoked frequencies. The Hindus sculpted gods with multiple arms to express cosmic forces acting simultaneously. And the Greeks? They hid truths in myths, where each character was an aspect of the human soul. Knowledge wasn't handed out directly. It was revealed in layers. But today, we live in a world that values literal meaning, and so we lost the map. Life doesn't speak English. It speaks in symbols. And everything around you is trying to tell you something. Repeating dreams, numbers that keep appearing, unlikely encounters. These are coded messages. But without the right dictionary, they seem like noise. You ignore what could be the most important clue of your moment. And the more you ignore it, the more disconnected you feel. Like a radio that stopped picking up the signal. Carl Jung said the unconscious speaks in symbols. He knew the deep mind doesn't understand logic, but it understands images, archetypes, and metaphors. That's why religions have used symbols for millennia. They weren't spiritual decorations. They were vibrational shortcuts, psychic portals, tools to activate specific inner states. But what happens when sacred symbols become t-shirt prints? The invisible language hasn't disappeared. It just changed clothes. It still speaks to you through synchronicity, modern archetypes, and the unspoken signs that appear when you stop overthinking. But to hear it, you need to silence the logical mind and awaken symbolic perception. This requires presence, refined attention, a way of listening that goes beyond the ears. And then the burning question arises. What if you're already being guided by something greater, but just haven't learned how to understand the message yet? You're breathing right now, effortlessly, without thinking. But what if I told you that the way you breathe doesn't just define your health, but your mental clarity, your dominant emotion, even your spiritual connection? Breathing is the only physiological act that can be both automatic and conscious. And there lies the secret few notice. It's the most direct portal between the body and the invisible. So why has something so powerful been reduced to just another biological function? Ancient cultures knew that breathing was much more than oxygenation. In Sanskrit, prana is the vital energy that flows with the breath, not the air itself, but what comes with it. In Egypt, the ka was activated through breathing practices. Tibetan masters used techniques like tummo to generate body heat in the snow. What were they accessing? It wasn't just physiology, it was a subtle force, an energy capable of altering states of consciousness. But why was this knowledge forgotten? Or rather, why did it never reach us? You were taught to memorize formulas, do math, follow schedules, but never to breathe with intention. No one showed you that by controlling your breath, you change your frequency. You calm your mind, unlock emotions, open intuitive channels. Maybe because someone realized that people who breathe consciously aren't easy to manipulate. Modern science is starting to catch up. Neuroscience research shows that rhythmic breathing activates the vagus nerve, calms the nervous system, and shifts brain patterns. But the ancients didn't have labs. They had direct perception. They felt in their bodies what we now try to prove with charts. The mystery is, how did they know so much? And why did we stop trusting that wisdom? Conscious breathing doesn't require a temple, a guru, or belief. It only requires presence. You, right now, in this very moment, can close your eyes and shift your vibration just with the rhythm of your breath. You can energize, you can heal, you can access dormant memories, and all of that, without anyone noticing. Maybe that's why this ancient technique was hidden behind the veil of banality. Have you ever felt someone's presence before they even entered the room? Or noticed that some places feel heavy in the air, while others make you breathe more easily for no apparent reason? That's not your imagination. It's sensitivity to the energy field, yours and your environment's. Science knows the human heart generates an electromagnetic field dozens of times stronger than the brain's. So why do we still live as if we were just flesh, bone, and thought? You are not a body with energy. You are energy using a body. Every organ vibrates at a frequency. Every thought affects your field. You emit signals. You pick up signals. And those signals cross paths in space like radio waves. Your body is an antenna, but how many times have you stopped to tune the frequency? Or have you spent your life tuned into static without even noticing? The ancients knew this. Chinese medicine mapped energy meridians thousands of years before modern science discovered electrical impulses in the nerves. The chakras described in India aren't colorful mysticism. They're energy centers connected to endocrine, glands, emotions, and psychic functions. But this knowledge was gradually silenced, caricatured, until it became a joke in memes. And with it, we lost the compass. Disconnection starts with the body. You grow distant from it, ignore its signals, numb your senses. You think it's normal to live with tension, insomnia, exhaustion. But that's not normal. It's a deregulated field. It's an antenna out of tune. And like any poorly calibrated antenna, it starts picking up interference, not truth. So you live reacting to the world without realizing your own frequency is guiding you or sabotaging you. You don't have to be mystical to notice the obvious. Peaceful people emit peace. Anxious people vibrate agitation, and you feel it without them saying a word. The field speaks before the mouth. Vibration arrives before presence. So the question isn't whether this is real. The question is, how have you been taking care of your energy? You sleep, the body rests, but something inside you keeps moving. What is that space where everything is possible, where time bends, where the dead speak and the impossible becomes ordinary? The dream world has always been treated as a mystery, but what few realize is that it's not just a reflection of your waking life. It's also a rehearsal for what you can create. Your subconscious, while you sleep, becomes an architect. Freud saw dreams as pressure valves. Jung saw them as symbolic messages from the soul, and ancient cultures went further. They saw dreams as sacred territory, where the spirit travels, learns, and transforms reality. For the Australian Aboriginals, the dream time was more real than waking life. For the Egyptians, dreaming meant walking among gods. So why do we now treat dreams as mental trash? The subconscious mind is a powerhouse. It doesn't sleep. It runs patterns, triggers emotions, projects scenarios, and most surprisingly, it doesn't distinguish imagination from reality. When you dream, your brain activates the same regions it would if those events were actually happening. This means that even asleep, you are shaping neural networks, emotions, and vibrations. You're influencing your waking reality without realizing it. But there's more. Some dreams aren't random. They repeat. They persist. They bring symbols, faces, situations that defy logic. They're trying to say something. But for that, you have to relearn how to listen, relearn how to write them down, observe, decipher. Because dreams don't speak in sentences, they speak in images. They speak in a language the rational mind has forgotten. And when you open up to it, you start accessing a kind of wisdom no school ever teaches. There are techniques, forgotten by time, that allow the dreamer to become active. It's called lucid dreaming, when you wake up inside the dream. Amazonian tribes trained for this with herbs and silence. Tibetan monks used dream yoga to maintain consciousness during sleep. And you? Are you losing half your life awake to a world you ignore? Maybe you don't need to change your reality. Maybe you just need to relearn how to dream. Have you? Noticed how fear paralyzes you? How it makes you shrink, doubt, hesitate? Fear is a primitive emotion, yes, but it's also a sophisticated tool. It has been used for centuries as a form of control. Governments feed it, religions use it, the media spreads it, and the most intriguing part, the more fear you feel, the more disconnected you become from yourself. But what if fear isn't just a reaction? What if it's a vibrational spell? That's no exaggeration. Science already knows that emotions emit specific frequencies. Fear, guilt, and shame are among the lowest. They contract the body's electromagnetic field. They weaken the immune system. They affect heart rhythm, and worst of all, they make you highly suggestible. As if, by vibrating in fear, your mind opens the doors to everything you would never consciously choose. Who you are when you're afraid isn't really you. Now think, why is the world so invested in keeping you afraid? Fear of failure, fear of being judged, fear of losing, fear of the future, even fear of being at peace. Because when you align with peace, you start to notice. And when you notice, you start to question. And when you question, you begin to free yourself. Fear is the noise that covers up your truth. It's the veil that blocks access to your inner power. But the most insidious thing is that fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it disguises itself as caution, as responsibility, as common sense. You stop acting because you think you're being rational, but in reality, you're being chained by thoughts that were planted there, like a soft poison. And when fear digs in deep, it no longer needs outside enemies. It does the sabotage itself, from within. And here comes the shift. Fear cannot be fought with force. It only dissipates with awareness. When you look at it directly, without running, it starts to lose its form. Because fear feeds on shadow, not presence. And the simple act of taking a deep breath and asking, is this real or is it just a story I was told, begins to break the spell. Maybe you were never weak. Maybe you just believed in a fear that wasn't even yours. From the first sound you made, the world started responding. Words aren't just tools of communication. They are energetic commands. Every sentence you speak is a kind of code, and that code activates reactions inside and outside of you. Have you ever thought about that? That by repeating certain words, you're reinforcing invisible patterns that shape how life unfolds around you? In Vedic tradition, mantras aren't prayers, they are power sounds. Each syllable carries a specific vibration, capable of affecting emotional states, activating energy centers, altering the subtle field of the body. Jesus said, "If you say to this mountain, 'Move,' it will move." That wasn't a metaphor. It was energetic science disguised as faith. Ancient Hebrews didn't speak the name of God lightly. They knew that sound shapes the invisible. And today, we use words without thinking, as if they were harmless. But neuroscience is starting to catch up to this mystery. Studies show that negative words increase activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center. Phrases like, "I can't," "it never works," "this is hard," reinforce limitation circuits. On the other hand, positive words, spoken with intention, rewire neural patterns. You are literally sculpting your mind with what you repeat. But who taught you to choose your words consciously? Have you ever stopped to notice the vocabulary you use with yourself? What mantras do you repeat silently? That's just the way I am. I always mess this up. I can't. They're simple phrases, but they work like spells. Every time you repeat them, you're programming your subconscious to repeat behaviors, emotions, outcomes. And the most unsettling part, you think you're just describing reality, when in fact, you're recreating it. Words have form. They have weight. They are pure vibration in motion. And like all vibrations, they resonate. The question is, what are your words resonating in the world? Do you speak as a creator or as a repeater? Because the distance between a sentence and a destiny is shorter than you think. Maybe the true power of language was never to teach us how to speak, but to remind us of what we're saying without realizing. Have you ever met someone who, for no apparent reason, triggered a strong emotion? In you, an inexplicable discomfort, an instant connection, or even the feeling that you already knew them. That's not just affinity or dislike, it's resonance. It's frequencies meeting, recognizing, or clashing. The other, more often than not, is a mirror showing parts of you that you don't want or aren't yet able to see. Quantum physics has already shown that particles separated by absurd distances remain connected, instantly reacting to changes in each other. This is called quantum entanglement. And the most intriguing question is, if particles can do that, why wouldn't human beings? Every encounter you have is an invisible exchange. You enter someone else's energy field, and they enter yours. Nothing remains the same after that, even if you don't notice it. In ancient spirituality, there was a clear understanding that relationships weren't random. They were agreements, mirrors, invisible contracts. Jung called this projection. What you see in others is often what is repressed or unacknowledged in yourself. A master may appear in the form of an enemy. A trauma can be triggered by a simple glance. And a deep love may come only to show you what you haven't healed yet. The problem is that we grow up looking at the world from the outside in, judging others' behavior, trying to change people, avoiding discomfort. But true power lies in reversing that direction. What does the feeling that someone triggers in you reveal about yourself? What bothers you so much, and why? Every strong emotion is a door. Every relationship is a mirror. But not everyone is willing to face what the reflection shows. Maybe that's why certain people seem to haunt us emotionally, not to torment us, but to show us what hasn't yet been integrated. They come as walking mirrors, exposing inner cracks with almost cruel precision. But if you accept the mirror, something changes. You stop reacting and begin to awaken. You start to see beyond the person. You see the symbol, the lesson, the calling. And then comes the inevitable question. What if no one crosses your path by chance? Have you ever felt a knot in your chest you couldn't explain? A tension in your stomach that seemed to come from nowhere? The body speaks what the mind tries to hide. Unfelt emotions don't disappear. They accumulate in subtle layers, as if time doesn't pass inside certain feelings. Suppressed anger, denied sadness, buried guilt, all of it turns into weight. An invisible weight you carry every day, even without realizing it. Modern medicine is beginning to recognize what the ancients already knew. There is a deep connection between emotion and illness. Louise Hay used to say that every disease begins as a thought. Wilhelm Reich, Freud's disciple, observed that repressed emotions lodge in the muscles, forming armor, energetic barriers. But you don't need to be a therapist to notice this. Just recall how the body responds to what the heart couldn't say. These trapped emotions turn into patterns. You start repeating the same behaviors, attracting the same types of situations, feeling the same emptiness. It's as if the emotion keeps running in the background, draining your vital energy. And the cruelest part? You think you're living normally, but you're living from within an invisible prison. A prison built by feelings you never knew how to release. There are ancient techniques for this. Shamanism uses purification rituals. Sufism dances until the emotion dissolves. Taoism activates points on the body to release what's been stored. Even modern science is approaching this through therapies like EMDR or TRE. But what all these practices have in common is something simple and powerful: giving the emotion a space to be expressed, without judgment, without repression, without hurry. You don't need to understand the emotion to release it. You need to feel it fully, to recognize it as a part of you that just wanted to be heard. Because emotion, at its core, is energy in motion. And if it's stagnant, it starts to deteriorate. It starts to weigh you down. It begins to seek revenge. In the body, the mind, the relationships. Liberation doesn't come from running away. It comes from the courage to face what you've spent your whole life avoiding. What if what you fear feeling the most is exactly what's keeping you from becoming who you truly are? There are pains that don't go away. They transform. They change the way you see, how you react, how you live. But what if you were told that pain was just a bad thing to be avoided? That suffering was a sign of weakness? What they didn't tell you is that every pain carries a code. A raw, unrefined code that once deciphered becomes strength, becomes awareness, becomes invisible gold. True alchemy doesn't happen in laboratories. It happens within the human being who chooses not to run away. The ancient alchemists knew this. The lead they sought to turn into gold wasn't metal. It was inner density. It was suffering, trauma, shadow. And the tool of transmutation wasn't a cauldron, but consciousness. The more you run from pain, the more it hides within you. The more you face it, the more it begins to melt. Pain doesn't want to punish you. It wants to wake you up. It wants to show you that right there, in that exact place, lies a piece of your dormant power. But the process is raw. It's dark. It's lonely. Inner alchemy begins when you stop trying to rationally understand why something happened and start asking, what is this here for? The trauma that broke you may have brought the compassion that now guides your steps. The loss that devastated you may have revealed the strength you never knew you had. None of this erases the pain, but it gives it meaning. And where once there was a wound, light begins to shine. Jung said, "What we do not face in ourselves, we will meet as fate." Transmutation is exactly that. Breaking the cycle, not repeating. Stopping the suffering from being projected onto the world, onto others, onto the future. To transmute is to say, it ends with me. And by doing that, you change not only your story, but the energy you leave in the world. Alchemy is not ego. It's silent service. It's healing that extends beyond the body. But no one taught you that. You were taught to pretend everything is fine, to smile on the outside and bleed on the inside, to distract yourself, to numb yourself, to stay busy. And so, we keep pushing pain into the basements of the soul, where it ferments and turns into fear, into illness, into anger. But what would happen if for the first time you decided to sit with it, to look it in the eyes, without hurry, without a mask, without guilt? Maybe what you most long to become is hidden in what you've most avoided feeling. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine yourself in a place of deep peace. Feel the scent of the air, the touch of the light, the silence that calms you from within. Now open your eyes. You've returned to the same physical place, but something in you has changed. The mental image didn't stay only in the mind. It affected your body, your rhythm, your state. And if that seems small, it's only because you haven't yet realized the true reach of what your mind can generate. Science already recognizes that the brain doesn't distinguish between a real experience and one that is vividly visualized. Athletes mentally train before a competition, and their muscles react as if they were actually moving. That's neurology, not magic. But if that works for the body, Why wouldn't it work for life? When you visualize with emotion, you're not just daydreaming. You're rehearsing a new reality. What the ancients called mental creation was, in practice, an inner ritual, a precise technique. They knew that what is formed in the invisible will, sooner or later, manifest in the visible. Egyptians created inner temples with mental symbols. Kabbalists drew realities with imagination. Tibetan masters practiced visualizations until they became as vivid as the outside world. Today, we call this a mental exercise, and we laugh as if it were fantasy. But why so much disbelief? Maybe because a mind that masters its inner image is a mind impossible to control. A person who knows how to visualize with intention no longer needs to consume pre-made realities. They create. They feel before they have. And the system doesn't want that. It wants you to react, not to generate. It wants you to wait for external results to change how you feel. And the secret of visualization is exactly the opposite, to change how you feel before the result. It's not about naive positivity. It's about vibrational tuning. When you feel gratitude for something that hasn't happened yet, you're aligning your frequency with the reality you desire. You're tuning the antenna. You're sending a signal. And reality, that living, intelligent energy, responds. Not as magic, but as resonance. But how many times a day do you visualize what you don't want without realizing it? Maybe the greatest power of the mind isn't to think, but to imagine so clearly that the world has no choice but to respond. You wake up, check your phone, get dressed on autopilot, leave the house with a busy mind and an absent body. The day begins, but you're not really present. And so, without realizing it, you fall into a rhythm that you didn't choose. Most people live as if they were just a body reacting to the world. But what if your day was an energetic construction site? What if, instead of reacting, you could set the vibration you want to sustain? In ancient traditions, the day didn't begin with rushing. It began with intention, lighting a candle, taking a deep breath, making a gesture, saying a word. None of that was random. They were rituals, small portals to remind the body that it is sacred and the mind that it creates. These rituals didn't require temples or dogmas, just presence, just the understanding that the invisible responds to details, and that details build reality. Today, we've replaced rituals with routines, but routine without awareness becomes a prison. And ritual is exactly the opposite. It's freedom concentrated in a moment. It's when you turn the everyday into alchemy. A shower can be energetic purification. A cup of coffee can be a moment of connection. A silent pause can shift your entire vibrational field. But no one taught us to live this way. We were taught to run, to do, to produce, to forget how to be. Have you noticed how certain days carry a different weight? As if something were out of place, even with no visible reason? Often, it's your energy field in disarray. The good news? It can be reconfigured with simple practices, a deep breath, a symbolic gesture, a conscious thought. Energy responds to intention, and your intention is the key that no one else can turn for you. These micro-rituals, when repeated with presence, begin to shift your field. You stop being a victim of circumstances and begin to sustain a stable internal state, even when everything outside is unstable. It's not about control, it's about coherence, about choosing each day which frequency you want to carry and which you no longer allow in. What if the sacred you're looking for is hidden precisely in the moments you most often disregard? Gratitude isn't just a nice feeling, it's a force, a vibration that, when genuinely felt, reorganizes everything around you, as if the universe paused for a moment to listen more closely. But this isn't the automatic gratitude we're taught to say out of politeness. It's the kind that pulses, that warms the chest, that makes you realize that, for a brief moment, you are the miracle unfolding. And when that vibration activates, something shifts, even if nothing seems to have changed. Neuroscience shows that feeling gratitude activates brain regions associated with pleasure, empathy, and well-being. Your heartbeat becomes more harmonious. The mind calms. The body's biochemistry transforms. All of this without taking anything, without going anywhere, without depending on anyone. Gratitude is, quite literally, an internal switch that changes your frequency. And frequency, as we know, is the language of reality. But there's something more subtle. Gratitude creates coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you emit. And when that coherence occurs, you become magnetic. You attract people, situations, answers. Not by effort, but by resonance. The world outside begins to reflect what you vibrate within. And then comes a secret few realize. You don't feel grateful because something good happened. Something good happens because you were grateful first. Mystics from many traditions knew this. Sufism sings gratitude in circular dances. Buddhism sustains thankfulness even in pain, understanding that there is learning within it. Indigenous cultures give thanks before harvesting, before eating, before receiving, because they knew that gratitude isn't a reaction. It's an invocation. It's a vibrational recognition that you are already part of the flow. And when you recognize that, the flow recognizes you back. Most people go through life waiting for reasons to be grateful, as if life had to prove something first. But the trick is the opposite. When you vibrate gratitude, without demand, without bargaining, you begin to see reasons where before there was only absence. Your perspective changes. Reality responds. The invisible starts to reorganize around you because you changed the field. There comes a moment when everything you sought, desired, and tried to achieve simply stops making sense. A silence starts to grow within. It's not depression. It's not failure. It's the void. And despite everything you've been taught, the void is not absence. It is origin. It is fertile soil before the seed, sacred space before creation. But why are we so afraid of it? The mind wants to fill, to understand, to control, to guarantee. But every great transformation begins when you stop filling and start allowing the nothingness, the silence, the pause. It is in the void that the most authentic things emerge. Because when there's no screaming desire, there's no noise. And when there's no noise, you can hear, not the voice of the ego, but something deeper. Something that has always been there, but only reveals itself once the rush is gone. Spiritual masters have always spoken of non-desire, not as a denial of life, but as an openness to what lies beyond control. Lao Tzu said, "The wise do not seek, and thus everything comes to them." Jesus withdrew to the desert. Buddha sat in silence for hours. It wasn't escape, it was a return, a reunion with the space where creation happens before it takes form, the space where wanting dissolves and being appears. The paradox is simple but revolutionary. The more you want, the further you are from what you seek. Because desire is born of lack, and lack vibrates scarcity. But when you enter the void without resistance, something changes. The field opens. You stop pushing the world and start dancing with it. And in that dance, life begins to respond more lightly, more fluidly, because you got out of the way. Most people never access this space. They're afraid to stop, afraid to do nothing, afraid to lose. But they don't realize that it's precisely in the not doing that the power of conscious creation lives. Not the kind born of effort, but the kind born of alignment. When you empty yourself, you're not losing, you're preparing the ground for something that couldn't be born while you were still full. And what if what you've been looking for isn't out there, but silently waiting for the moment when you're empty enough to receive it?